early since we found out they were 5% interest rate. And according to the state bond bank, they think maybe the 2012, because you're, 5% at $400,000 is not chump change. So I just want to let you know on that. And we want to go back and visit the Nome bond, which is all the way at the top of your sheet here. This was taken out in 1986. Right now, you are scheduled to pay it off in 38, so you'll end up having that bond for close to 54 years. We were going to look at, could we shorten the term and get a better interest rate? Now, I think this paid for, does anybody remember?
It's the Coastal Energy Impact Program, CEIP. We got $5 million to build on the causeway. It was supposed to be forgiven if well development didn't happen. Well development didn't happen. We fought it for probably 15 years. It was in moratorium, and that's why it seems like it's a real long thing, because it stayed out of repayment status for a long time, and despite all the efforts to get it forgiven, we weren't successful.
And actually, this was actually refinanced, because originally it was an 8.5%, and it was refinanced in 2009 when interest rates for bonds, municipal tax-free bonds, went down to 4. They're down to 2% right now. So we are going to recommend, if this is also callable, because we got to, once again, but it's something that we're going to check into. But all these other, if you notice, other than the NOAA bond, you are out. You just paid everything off. The latest is 2028. You paid one off this year, or last year, 12/1, I should say. Another one is paid off September 1st, 2023. So those are positive things. You're not carrying a lot of debt right now.
I guess I misread the thing about that being NOAA. I thought there was a thing, or maybe there also is a thing with the pay off the landfill, and it seems like there's a DEC loan out there.
Now, we were looking for bonds. Is that a bond or?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a revenue bond, revenue note, that's fine.
We'll find out, because this should have shown, brought to our attention anything of debt service that the city was paying. And Nikki is on the line, and
go ahead.
We did pay off the landfill loan this year, if that's what you're asking. You were kind of breaking up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that was what I was curious about. Thank you, Nikki. And then just I guess the one thing on I didn't realize all of those were school debt bonds that we have, the 3 of them there. So that has been subject to the reimbursement of the interest by the state. And it sounded like from Wendy that was going to happen again this year. So as long as the state's paying for it, I mean, we still should save the money, or tell them, that we could save them money, I guess, if those got refinanced or paid off. And I don't know if they, would be amenable to that.
Well, there's very little that we may be able to do. So since, that's the other issue. Now this year they said they were going to, are they going to fully fund us? I mean, I can't keep track of the state, what they're going to fund this year and what they're not.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, all right. Other than that, the chief is here. I'm going to let him go through his budget. I'm going to, and we're going to then talk about the call center, which is a little bit different because there's manpower additions there. But, what we also did with this year, if you look over to the right under budget notes, we anticipated that we will have savings. So Nikki elected to put them there this year here versus where we had them in another line item. So if you have any questions about that. Chief?
Yes, sir. I'll go through some of the big increases with the police department. I know that the ammunition and weapons budget, it has been a, a situation where I'm trying to play catch up for the years past when they budget for ammunitions and firearms was $2,500. When Chief Estes was there, the ammunition budget was never even spent. So when I got there, the cupboard was bare, so to speak. And of course, we had to make a very large order of ammunition last year. We got what we could with my budget from last year. I know that, of course, the things across the United States have taken a turn as far as availability of ammunition and firearms. My hope was to get several new rifles. We got 4 last year. We need at least 4 more if possible. One of the things that concerns me with Nome is the fact of over-penetration from um, firearms. And in the right situation, you got to choose the right tool. It would be a situation where potentially you got to, say, for example, you got an armed subject in a given housing development and stuff. That's not a prime area to be discharging your weapon anyway. But then I really worry about weapon and over penetration. So that's why I was looking to get several shotguns. I was hoping to get Remington 870s. Of course, Remington went out of business. There is no available shotguns except for Benelli's, and I was hoping to get 3 of those. I know that the handguns that we had, the handguns have been in service for quite a long time, and no one has kept good records as far as the ammunition, well, the firearms and how much ammunition has been expended through them. So I'm trying to get something that would be a little more cost effective, and that would be Glock and 9mm of Model 17. I've been researching the last several days. I know that the ammunition you figure is half the weight. The standard 45 load is a 230 grain lead projectile, where the Glock uses in the 9mm configuration would use 115 grain or 124 grain, depending on which round was used. The ballistics are very good for the 9mm, so of course that's what I'd like to get. And I would only purchase half the pistols for next year, and hopefully that other half of pistols the following year, because that would allow us the opportunity to expend the 45 ammunition that we currently have. In addition, I was hoping to get some rifle ammunition, 9mm ammunition, and shotgun ammunition for the officers to qualify with. Of course, ammunition prices have just skyrocketed tremendously. So, my budget last year was $10,500, and I used that in one order. And I still got some room to grow. Uh, you know, it's just the fact that weapons are expensive, and they're expensive to run, and the good ones are expensive to buy. But it's one thing I would like to lay before you as far as that goes. Uh, the next item I would have to say would be vehicles, and I'll let my deputy chief talk about them.
We came to you earlier for the capital meeting on vehicles and presented the idea of either the F-150 or an Expedition. And we've kind of elected to go with an Expedition this year since we got the F-150s last year. Just a single Expedition. Also with the hope of getting a side-by-side would allow us to effectively patrol the whole city of Nome, to include the shorelines and the beaches and areas where folks have been able to straggle into places where we haven't been able to effectively patrol. The problem with that is, and what we brought to you earlier, is the manufacturers, both in automobiles and also side by side, are way behind on orders due to the COVID last year being shut down for a period of time. We tried to get independent bids from both dealerships here in Nome. The gentleman over at the Polaris deal can't even give us an estimate. He has no idea when he'll get them in. He can't give us a written estimate as to what it would cost. The gentleman at the other place did give us a written estimate. And actually, he was receiving one, but he doesn't anticipate receiving another one for the rest of the summer. So we're kind of at the point where he actually called us about an hour before the meeting to say he had a cash buyer for the one that was coming in, but wanted to give us first option at it. So that's really the only one that we could possibly get that we would be able to use this summer to patrol the whole, the whole beach and the areas that we need. Again, with that one, the idea would be that it wouldn't be exclusively used by the police department, it'd be used by search and rescue, ambulance, anybody that needs it. But I feel like it was in need of the city, and we'll let you know that. So that's where we are on vehicles. We are pretty good with the F-150s, are doing really well. Our Explorers are doing well. We have 3 of those. Probably where we're hurting now is on our older Expeditions. We have one that has totally the transmission out of it. It's not movable right now. We have to make the decision on whether that's something we want to deadline or get fixed. We've been told they'd have to actually send the piece to Anchorage to get repaired and then sent back. It couldn't be done here. So we're in the process of that one. And it may be a decision where it's just cheaper to deadline that one, and the new Expedition would take its place. That's really where we stand on those. We still have the 2 CSO vans that we're using. And we have one vehicle that was a felony DUI seizure that really just used for kind of running around town for different things there, but it really doesn't have all the features that we would use for something day to day. It's more just for running errands and stuff for the police department. So that's the fleet right now.
All right, let me walk the council through, just so you know. We have 1 chief of police position as you're going down, page 30.
Everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, 36. We have a deputy chief. We have 2 sergeants right now. We only have 6 officers. 2 of them are in field training, and 1 officer is on workman's comp. So you understand what some of the challenges the department has. We are recommending that we go back to 6 call center operators. Right now, we have a vacancy in the call center supervisor. We have 2 call center operators that are probably going to be out for a period of time on personal related issues. So we're going to be still dependent on part-timers and the full-timers that we do have. We also have in here an administrative assistant, a victim's advocate, an accreditation manager if the council proceeds to go through with CALIA or with the Oregon regional certification. We look at the earliest that person is going to be on is January 1st, 22, because we still have not, we're hoping this is going to be discussed with the Public Safety Advisory Commission this Monday. And then we have a part-time evidence custodian. Community service officer that we currently have, Mr. Piercy, is retiring after a long service to the city. And the chief has recommended we go to 2 part-time, 28 hours apiece. So we'll have a little bit more CSO. We are down to 1 investigator. As of right now, only the number today, there are 19.
I met with Investigator Weaver after we spoke today. The number's 17 now.
17 active cases, and that includes the 460 that we were looking at a year ago. Also, to let you know that that full-time investigator that helped us get these calls has noticed us that he is leaving. We have overtime for the police officers, overtime for the dispatchers. Then you see the salary vacancy savings. But
How is it that we, sorry, I know this is a budget meeting, but just really distracting to hear somebody who's coming and does the most work in a long time.
Ian, I mean, I can go into it with you personally, but since we're being broadcast,
I know it's a budget meeting, it's just, it's disheartening to hear the issues that we have in filling these positions.
well, then you'll appreciate when we get further down, because that's also going to be discussed. So, Nikki Incorporated savings from a PO1, we are anticipating, and we used PO1, it could be any position of 1.5 positions on average is going to be vacant this year. CO1 is the same thing. And of course, that once we make that decision, it flows through the rest of the budget with savings in the other line items like PERS, Medicare, life insurance. Vehicle insurance, we're waiting for current rates. This week, Nikki and I and DPW have gone through and looking at all the vehicles that we're insuring. We're anticipating having an auction, and we looked at the valuations of those vehicles. Liability, yeah, so we're waiting for insurance rates. The other professional contracts are there. Afson, Crime Star, Canon, GC, SIT, which is our outside third-party vendor for computer services. Background checks. Now, where it jumps is down in buildings and land rental. We are proposing for the city to lease an apartment. The tenants would be city employees, city police officers, and they would at least have a place to come here and get started. This past winter, we were using the apartment that we rent from VFW to get officers up here and get them started. Finding housing that it is housing that would be acceptable for people not familiar with housing and coming up into this area. So we have talked with Sit and Suck, and they have an apartment that they would like to, furnished apartment they would like to lease for the city for 2 years until we've addressed that ongoing housing issue. The computer software, you heard about the switch the other day. Dues and memberships are relatively the same. We upped police training. It was your auditor recommended that, so we have more training for our police officers. Uniform and clothing with new officers. We need more clothing. Firearms, the chief has mentioned that to you. And I'm just looking through this if there's anything of significance. Nikki, am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
So we're here to answer your questions.
Okay, start down there with Sig. Okay.
How many vacancies do we have right now in the department?
We have 2 vacancies for police officer 1 or 2, depending if they came in accredited. And we have a investigator position vacant. And the proposal is also, as it was mentioned in the budget message, excuse me, you weren't here, I'm sorry.
I watched the meeting.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay. That the PO2 We use that individual also as an investigator too.
So there'll be a full-time investigator and possibly a part-time investigator as a
Right.
POC.
If we ever got into that large demand, there is someone that the department is looking at to be an investigator.
Internally.
No,
Okay.
externally, that would join the department. Don't want to get into that. I'm more than willing to discuss it.
So we have 3 vacancies.
3 vacancies, 2 vacancies that are critical.
So we were trying to lease an apartment. This is where I'm headed with this. So we're trying to lease an apartment for 2 years for 2 vacancies.
We are looking at renting an apartment for 2 people that are up here right now that don't have a place to go as of June 1st.
Can we comment on that?
Yes, you certainly may, Chief. This is,
Jennifer, it's initially that the contract would be written that the city is responsible, but it doesn't mean that the city is actually going to be paying for it. What would happen is the occupants of the apartment, and there's ample room for, have a potential for 4 usage, but probably if you think of 3, and if the rent is, say, $1,900 a month, for example, that it would be split into thirds. So each officer that would occupy that. We have 2 officers right now that are in town that do not have housing, and as part of that, they would be able to move into and of course pay their third. If a third of the apartment as yet unfilled would be the responsibility of the city. But most of the time, I'm anticipating that we should have people to put in that apartment, and they would be able to split the rent.
With the recent switch from Sergeant Harrison moving to do the IT stuff, it actually opens up a sergeant slot. There's only one sergeant slots filled right now, and there are 3 vacancies in the patrol where we're off. Where we're allocated 8 patrol officers. Currently, with 2 in field training, we have 5. One of those is on light duty, an additional officer on light duty. So we actually have 3 vacancies in patrol right now, as well as a sergeant vacancy.
but you also have, are you counting Mr. Murray, that is down as a patrol officer right
But
now?
I have him right now. No, he is right now as an investigator.
Right, but he's been moved to patrol, so that's where I'm counting that person, because council has already been briefed of the recommendation to lose an investigator because we don't have enough work to support 2 full-time investigators.
Okay.
Is that 5,
Go ahead.
is that 5 that you're talking about include the officer who's been off
Workman's comp.
workers' comp for a long time?
Well, if we're it's actually, if we are including the officer that was in investigations is currently in patrol, that would give us 6 officers total of the 8. But one of those is on light duty, so there's only 5 available, 2 of which are in field training and not on their own yet.
And we're hoping the officer that's on work comp will be back.
You sufficiently answered your question.
Not really.
Okay.
So this lease will, you know me, the lease will only be covered by somebody else if there's people in it. That's what I heard you say. So these 2 officers that currently live here, I'm assuming are looking for housing.
They are living in the VFW apartments already rented by the city, and they are looking for housing. Of course, housing is very expensive.
They couldn't find, housing, so we used the housing that we're renting anyway from the VFW. And in the summer months, other employees use the housing at the VFW. We also use the housing, I think, to help offset some cost. When a contractor is up there, we can put them in there. Right now, we actually have another employee that we're working with, that we are working with NJUS and using, their housing till we can get that individual on her own into housing. So it's getting to be a real push-up if we're going to get people here. And we, on my request, Mike approached Sitnasuk to see if they had anything available. And they had a 3-bedroom unit that would be furnished, just like we would be doing in hopefully 2 years from now when the teacher and police officer housing is done. We're just getting in this a little bit earlier so we can have a place for these folks to get up here and get started. But the idea on this is that the city has limited exposure on this, in that the rent is going to be paid by the police officers.
So, there, Jennifer, you see that offset there that's anticipated over in the budget column, in the note column. 33.6 was the rental expense, but the proposed revenue offset, so essentially the 6,000 that would be an actual expense for when it was vacant, the light. Obviously, that's assuming that people do come in, but if we don't get people coming in, then we're paying for a rent and we're not paying for a person, unfortunately. But I know it's extremely difficult to get people in here and to, the VFW stuff, when we continued that, joining the port uses it during the summer, and then when we have John Blees, these different contractors that are here, they go up there as well, which is, even though we're renting something year round, because the utility does the same thing, and it saves us money by renting year round as opposed to paying $300 and something a night down at the Aurora for the time that we're actually there. So,
and Jennifer, we also have 2 other identified individuals hoping that they will come to the police department. They're in background right now, and they have applied. So that will allow us to fill our ranks, hopefully fairly quickly. And we're anticipating the unit would be ready by June 1st. We're hoping to have these guys come up there by June 1st. So.
Thank you.
I had one question on the vehicle. Where are you getting the vehicle from, or through what?
The expedition is coming off of a state bid.
The state bid.
Yes.
Adam, good.
Now,
Safe.
side by side,
That's-
that's different.
I'm sorry, is the state bid the same as the state, going through the state channels of
Right,
vehicles?
the state contract.
So go ahead.
Just on the housing, so it's intended to be transitional, like they'll stay there temporarily while they're looking for longer term permanent housing, or?
They could be in there for long term, and if they end up being in there long term, we're going to obviously want them to transition the lease into their name. The housing that you're looking at potentially participating in could be just like teacher housing. Some teacher housing has been occupied for years. Once, if the housing project, and I always say if, because we haven't bid prices or anything like that, but if the housing is built, then they will transfer, if they still haven't found housing. But, it depends on the situation. If an office, we have some officers who are married. We have other officers who have family members who work for the city, and they're sharing spaces. This is more for getting the police officers. Now, in fairness, these guys want these people up here right away. They come to me and say, where am I going to put them? And then we start playing, where can we find housing? And I will say that we put one person in housing. I wouldn't, I heard problems with it after the fact. And, I just know that that is one thing that helps make it a little easier for people to know that they have housing. It's decent. It's what they would have fairly close to what they may have in where they're coming from. I just think that's one component to get people to consider staying.
Gerald, did you
Nope.
anybody else on the thing? Okay, I just had a couple of things on the ammunition thing. I know it's expensive, but we've also tried to keep these people in proper marksmanship and invested money in somebody that actually can certify our people here in town. We got this shooting range up there, and I guess I'd rather that if they need to kill an elephant, that they do it with one shot as opposed to 3 or 4. So let's keep them trained in that area. It was just interesting the other day that there was a story about a place in New York that never fired a shot. How many shots did we fire last year? Any or many or?
As far as for training purposes?
Not for training purposes, for
Duty.
on,
I can't think of one.
yeah, I didn't think it. I'd heard of any either in the process, and that's a good thing. But if they need to fire, we want them to hit the target, and I think that practice makes closer to perfect. The weapons need. You're saying about phasing it in over 2 years, just because you're going to use up what you've got, and then.
Well, it's we had purchased ammunition last year, which was 45, and we have ample 45. That does not need to be purchased. Things went crazy in the United States, of course, and it was before we had the opportunity to purchase a bunch of the weapons, because we tried to manage the amount of money that we had, which was $10,500 previous year, and we purchased a quantity of ammunition, and the money that was left over, we purchased 4 rifles. Of course, I have 8 patrol positions, 2 additional sergeants, so that's 10. But realistically, I figured that 1 rifle for the average individual, the sergeants don't need to carry one. I wanted to have the availability of some shotguns that would remain with the vehicle and taken out of the vehicle at night, but remain with the vehicle. Because of the fact that, like I had said, the over-penetration of the rifle itself, it's not something that you want to discharge in a occupied building that had other occupied units right next to it. I wouldn't want to, and I don't really want to discharge a firearm in any building here. But it's just the fact that with the 223 and the bonded ammunition we're shooting through it, it has the ability to penetrate quite a bit. As far as the handguns go, well, we just had to purchase 1 9mm for our new officer, because she couldn't reach her hands around it. And it is the Glock 21 that we normally would carry is a rather big pistol. From studies that have been done, as well as me calling the FBI, I had one individual that I had worked with years ago, and I actually supervised this guy. He went to the FBI and became, after 10 years, he became the firearms instructor at Quantico. So I called him and I asked him about the reports on the penetration, etc., on the 9mm. And it turns out that the penetration capability on the 9mm is actually a little bit better than the .45, but by no means a rifle. So, and the 9mm is much easier to shoot more accurately because of people worrying about, I guess, recoil. It would be the word that. The other thing is that the ammunition costs are cheaper. There's a little bit cheaper. So, and what we would save is additionally it would be on shipping because of the weight. The ranks of the ammunition that had been depleted over the years since we purchased very little. Our policy was requiring us to qualify with a handgun 3 times a year and twice with a rifle. They weren't following that policy at all. But it is in policy, and until it's rewritten, it remains the law of the land, so to speak. So we do want our officers to be able to be proficient in shooting, and as such, the training sessions require us to expend quite a bit of ammunition, and you know it's a skill that's not like riding a bicycle. You got to stay, you know, up on it, and hopefully we never have to use it. But just like I found out on Friday night when they called me out, I almost had to fire on an individual. So I'm hoping that never has to happen in the city of Nome. But uh, my mission is to make sure that the officers are proficient in what they carry.
I guess my question is just a little deeper on that, or slightly different. And you know, the comment about having to buy a smaller gun, you know, I mean, it's just the same that if I was doing it, you'd have to get something that could shoot left-handed. I mean, that we've had more slight officers in the past where you know we've also had to purchase you know weapons that were compatible with their hand size. You know, and the rifle thing, I understand that you know you can't really have that as a car thing. I mean, it's sighted in for an individual, and so you know Jennifer might not shoot as well with Adam's gun, and you know Sig probably could use both of them. So. But the real point, I guess, is again on the phasing of the thing. You know, if we need the stuff, but we're just trying to split the stuff up, I'm concerned that we don't do that we get to phase 2. Often we just buy, you know, what we think we need to get by, and you know, all of a sudden, years down the road, we're having to change out every taser because you know they just were never taken care of or refreshed along the way. And whether it's, I guess, either we need to do something like committing to forward funding for the next phase, which we can't really do, but you know, at least the legislature this time is doing for school funding. They're going to do it, you know, 2 years out. I understand. Isn't that what it was? Yeah, yeah. So that they don't have to go through the thing with you know layoffs and all that other stuff. And you know, either we should you know do something or indicate you know I guess our intention so somebody can come back and say you said that to fund these things next year, or just get them all at once. So
Well, I mean, the goal with the department is they're planning on this year. I mean, it's, you know, as long as I think the council knows that what the intention is, that this is going to be a 2-year plan, and hopefully that is agreeable. You know, we bought the tasers, we changed the tasers now, that's on a lease, and after the lease is up, that's when the next phase of tasers become available to us, because that's a 5-year lease agreement, Nikki, which is in the back of my mind. That's what I thought it was.
Yep. Yep, that's the proposal.
So that's how you bought your tasers last year. But I do agree with you. You know, we don't want to have different guns because then the armory guy, the gunsmith that we would be using, you know, would have all these different parts for all these different guns. It's a much more expensive operation to maintain.
Well, if I can comment on that, the Glock's pretty much a universal tool. One barrel, the difference between the 21 that we carry, which is 45 ACP, or 9 millimeter, is realistically one's a little bit bigger frame and has a bigger barrel. But, you know, the parts for most Glocks are interchangeable. Um, and I would say this, that there's no telling with the climate that's currently existing out there if I'd even get to spend a good portion of this. Because right now, the availability of weapons, I had to hunt high and low to find one 9 millimeter, and it was an older version of the current one. They're at a generation 5. I had to get a generation 3 because it's the only one they had. Ammunition, you had to pre-order some ammunition just to get it on the agenda. So it's just very, very tight right now, and I don't know if the climate will let up and people. I think right now the problem they say is that people are hoarding the ammunition, and they're just trying to fill the existing orders that were already done. So, uh, you know, it's kind of a tough place. Police departments are trying to gather as much ammunition as they can because you know, and get it when they can.
The shotguns and rifles, you're replacing existing shotguns and rifles, or you're adding?
They had one 870, and it was not a police 870. It was a civilianized version. And that was the only shotgun that was workable up there. And actually, I looked at it, and it was not functioning. So we got one new shotgun in, which is a Benelli, and that even hasn't been fired yet. I was hoping to get 3 more, and that would be rotated in and out the cars. So, like I said, the Remington, of course, you know what happened to Remington Corporation, and they were bought off, and they're not currently manufacturing guns.
What about the
There are a
rifles?
couple.
What about the rifles?
The rifles we can get possibly. I
What
have
are you getting? I mean, what is it you're desiring, and are you replacing existing rifles you're adding?
the rifles that we have up there right now have been fired so much, and this is coming from the firearms guy that we have been fired so much. We've tried replacing parts on them, and they're still malfunctioning. So we were hoping to get 4 new Rock Rivers if possible. But that also depends on whether or not I can find them. They may not be, you know, we may not we'll come up empty. So it's me rolling the dice right now as if I can even find these guns.
They need to work when you need them to work, and I guess that's my only point. Let's make sure that the equipment where we have huge liability is not as much of a liability. I guess this being our biggest department, and maybe it seems like we're zeroing in on some small things, but nonetheless, I think they're important. And I guess the other night the thing came up about this side by side deal, and the um, there was a EMS member here that said, "Hey, I thought that was for us. Why is it for the police department?" Glenn said you can share, but in reality, I know there's going to be a call on the West Beach, and there's going to be a fight over who. I guess I just make that as a comment that, while no intent for a, not sharing on things, I can see it really comes down to that there's gonna be some conflicts in that.
And I can,
Well, let me, I'm also with them. The fire department, the chief's here, you know, that was voiced by a member of the fire department. The fire department did submit their budget. They did not submit a side-by-side. Yes, the side-by-side is gonna be parked probably at the fire station, because I don't want that having to be driven down all the way from the police station. I would like it there, so if an officer decides he or she wants to go out and patrol the beach, they can do it without going through all this movement of vehicles, and that was where the intent. I'm not sure where Ken was coming from, but, the fire department has their request, which we'll get to, but, sometimes we do have to share equipment, and I don't expect the police to be on it 24 hours a day. They're gonna be probably going out more towards the evening hours when we seem to have more trouble out there.
if I may. I know that equipment that is a lot of times shared between agencies gets kind of abused and not really taken care of. So one party or the other should be the primary caretakers of that and make sure the oil is changed and make sure that, whatever is needed as far as maintenance goes is taken care of. As far as the PD's use of the thing, I know that we do have quite a few reports of sexual assaults that happen on the other side of the rocks. We have drug deals that are happening on the other side of the rocks. And it's still part of Nome City, and it deserves to be patrolled. So, in a standard vehicle, very difficult. I know we went to pick up the deceased gentleman the one time on the beach, and it's very rough getting through there. I know vehicles have gotten stuck and needed to be pulled out, but it would be used primarily, as far as the police department's use of it would be to do routine patrols, and I would like to make that happen on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that Ken's comment was from the ambulance side of things, and possibly, but to wanting or believing that the city needs to have these assets available, so they're not using personal assets that may be damaged in the process. So that's where that's coming from. But Jimmy might have something else to say about it when we get around to him, and just so you knew that had been a discussion thing. The side by side that's available right now, is that what you want or just what you would take?
It's actually what was, we had talked about it with Can-Am people at Wilderness, and we discussed with them what we were looking for in a vehicle, which basically was this. We needed a vehicle which would accommodate two people and have a cargo area that would be able to carry rescue type stuff, first aid type stuff, anything that might be needed to be used for patrol. And even as far as we wanted to have like an eye bolt put in the passenger side. So should we need to take a prisoner, we can do that way also. I have been instrumental in one officer that called me one day, and he had arrested an individual on the other side of the rocks, the seaside of the rocks. And we had to carry him over the rocks to get him back to the car. I wouldn't want to do that again because that was bad mojo. But I know that, like I said, the one we were looking at had a heater in it and had windows. So, it could be used right up to the point when it starts snow would be falling.
To the thing on, the uses, obviously, for, you know, ambulance or search and rescue and that, they want something that has more space for, storing stuff and hauling stuff, probably on, you know, the, local patrol and all that other stuff. You probably don't need, you know, double wheels on the back, you know, a big long thing, you know, a smaller, you know, you don't need a 350, a 150 would do type of thing. And so, I mean, that may be another reason to consider, um, based on the use.
Well, we could get more features, and we talked to them about, you know, what we would need. We told them what our intended use would be. And I know that, we could get a better deal going with a smaller engine than we could if a bigger engine came in. It was gonna be several thousand more. So there's no need for us to have a 1,000 cc when an 800 cc would be useful. And that's what we were looking at when that's potentially what is coming in.
I guess it was a matter if the, if the, department and the manager felt, that, you know, in light of what we've had going on in different areas and we want to be able to get there and we don't want to wait for 2 summers to do it, you know, if that was something that the council kind of thought was important to do it, and just like nod to Glenn and say, you know, find some money somewhere to do it, or let's make it happen type of thing.
So you're telling us the one that's coming in fits the needs that you currently have?
You know, and Bob's pretty elegant at talking about that stuff. But
It fits exactly what we're looking at
So we
without,
should find a check sooner rather than later, that's what you're kind of getting at?
if you
You have a
want.
cash buyer, I'm sure he's
We
not.
have a
gonna
cash
use it.
buyer. Yeah, he has a cash buyer. He was kind enough to call me today to say, thank you for stopping in. I want to give the city first shot, but
And I heard you say you're gonna use it for patrol, not just, as needed when.
right, not just for arrests on the other side of the road, but the idea is to try to go to areas where people are not used to seeing us, because people tend to go to areas where they don't think they're gonna be seen for activities. So that's the purpose.
And we are in the process of getting signage developed so we can post the areas so no one can claim they did not know.
I don't think there's objection, Glenn, to you finding the money so that they can call the dealer tonight and say, hold it for us. Am I speaking correctly?
I can look at faces. Do not.
All right, anything else for the police department presently? Just, again, staffing that you have in here is not necessarily the plan that circulated a couple years ago. That, you know, there was some criticism of not implementing that plan, but you're comfortable with that you can provide services based on what is here.
I'd say so. Yes, sir.
I think once we get our patrol vacancies filled, we will be able to serve the city well.
And that once we get our numbers to what they should be, it's going to open up the potential for more training to be done. I know that Greg Russell's report outlined a matrix of training that should be done in the course of a police career, and of course, with people leaving on a regular basis and getting burned out, of course that hasn't been followed. I know that the officers have had they've had a tremendous amount of pressure put on them because we're constantly tasking them with mandatory overtime, and you know it's made everybody kind of weary. So now we got 2 officers that are here right now, and I see that many of the hopes are up that we'll get some pressure relieved and be able to do some more things that we need to do to develop their careers and provide better services to Nome.
I also want to let, we're not just accepting any officer candidate. We've had well north of 75 applications. Plus we get the word of mouth that, that we're looking. So I just, we're not pulling from as small a pool that you may have. I just don't have the information, but I think the chief overall has been pleased that we've been using Indeed, the AML site, and the Alaska State Trooper site.
The addition of the bonus that we provided been fruitful.
Well, I could say we had one fella that came up here and he had the bonus in sight, but he never got to utilize it because he just decided Nome was not for him after a couple weeks. But we have drawn in one officer from Wisconsin, Georgia, and we have another officer that came in, and he's not eligible for the full bonus because he has been through the academy but has not put in his field training, so he would come in and not be able to get the bonus. But I know it's um, kind of a reward, so to speak, but I'd say it absolutely does not hurt because the cost of moving people, and that's our goal is to get people that actually live in Nome, and the costs of moving to Nome are quite expensive, as everybody knows. And I think it offsets what normally would have been allowed as at some point moving expenses. The $10,000 bonus would be given to them, but of course, only 25% up front until they finish their field training, and then the remainder upon that. To answer your question, I think it's a good part of the advertisement. I think that's why we got a lot of applications. We have 2 pre-certified officers, over 48, and I'm sure it was instrumental in maybe swaying their decision. One of them wants to make Nome his home. The other is interested in 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But they would come in and they would be eligible for the $10,000 bonus. I remember before we implemented that we were not getting the caliber officers apply. So I can say that it's probably pretty good.
How many of the currently filled positions are on off versus?
2, 3.
It's
It's
Not Vince, Alex.
It's Alex and Liz. Our light duty officer right now is on rotation, and our Sergeant Alex Lay is. One of our new hires intends to be when he can finish his field training.
but he has since been in Nome. He said he likes it a lot and wants to bring his girlfriend and daughter and move to Nome. So we're hoping he stays. That helps out the police department because if we need someone to come in and fill a shift or something, we have someone that actually lives in town. Otherwise, we burn out the guys that do, and the people that get to fly out for 2 weeks, they're not utilized.
And the on off, they stay in the apartment.
We would have 1 or 2 that would be on off in that apartment. And so you'd never have, if you had, say, for example, you had 3 people in there and 2 of them are on 2 week on, 2 week off. Well, you'd never really have more than 2 in that apartment, even though it's a 3-bedroom. And that's why it's palatable, both to the 2 officers right now and to the other officers we had talked about.
One of those folks actually has other family in town and is on accommodation. Alex.
So just for historical purposes, we were at $2.3 million for the police department for a number of years, or hovering around 2 million and 2.3 last on this worksheet here, and then we okayed a budget of $3 million, which looks like it's was amended based on, I think, not being able to fill positions, maybe down to 2.3. And the current one is asking for 3.3 million.
Wasn't part of the budget amendment to making some adjustments for CARES funding?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
we used, you were able to use the CARES fund for a substantial portion of the operations of the police and department last year.
Remind John, that makes more sense.
All right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much. And I guess I just wanted to comment on Officer Wanja. I can't say her last name, so.
Canuthia.
What?
Canuthia.
Nufia.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Well, consider this, she informed me that it's Swahili.
Ah.
In Swahili language, you pronounce every letter. So that's Canuthia, it's spelled exactly like that.
Okay, great. Well, I saw her again today, and Cordell, and they both were smiling. And she's been here for 4 or 5 weeks, and doesn't look like she's leaving, so that's great.
She loves it here.
Excellent. All right, thank you.
If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, can we do the fire chief?
Sure.
Um,
And then we got Chip, and that's it for tonight? Or-
Well, we actually have your budget.
Oh, okay, well, that won't take long.
I've got a brief question.
Oh, what's that?
I've got a brief question as well.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, this is a budget meeting, sales tax, budget. There's a possibility that we could do the seasonal sales tax, that we could repeal the seasonal sales tax for the summer by June 1st. But it's, I have to know if it's gonna pass before I actually, by tomorrow.
Now though? We
Yeah.
can't.
Nope.
No,
You
that's
can't
what I
vote
mean,
on
yeah. We can't vote on it.
You have to vote on it tomorrow though, right?
Well, no, it takes more readings than that to actually.
Actually, you have to give 30 days notice.
Yeah.
And it's not 30 days notice of when the ordinance passes. So it's a little bit of a loophole, but if we give 30 days notice and that doesn't pass, then it'll be taxing people at a different rate. So.
I guess, I don't know that it specifically helps on this, but potentially it does. Can we just have a special meeting Monday to have the first reading? Get it moving? Or is there any value in that?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you still wouldn't have, Monday is the 3rd, you still wouldn't have 30 days.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yep, okay. Well, I guess if you can read faces, you know what will happen, but.
I thought we were gonna get that through again, so.
Circle back to it, what's the other fire chief
Okay.
talk?
The fire chief, the change in this budget, one of the significant changes is going to 2 full-time persons and 1 administrative person in there. So that's the big change. Also an increase in volunteer incentives, which is relatively small. You're on page 39, excuse me. The chief Chief and I were just discussing this before we came down, or before I came down, he had left. There's a possibility that we have budgeted in this budget, the $65,000 for the hose truck. That's possible that could be paid for out of the money that's already allocated in this year's budget. So that item might come completely off the table. So with that, Chief, you want to?
Yeah, the biggest issue is the paid position, moving into a more of a hybrid paid versus volunteer. We generate enough money from our billing, from our billing revenue side of things to help take the load off of the volunteers. That's why the big push for the added full-time position. I'm currently working through with COVID happening and which kind of put a damper on the purchase of the new vehicle or a newer vehicle for our hose truck. I still have my feelers out trying to get that done before this year's budget is in, which is coming soon, which I would have to have the vehicle on the barge by the 15th of June, which is just around the corner. But hopefully,
Actually, 2 weeks. We'll give you June 30th. It has to be on the barge or at the dock.
well, that would get it here in July, I guess the second or third sailing. So, but other than that, the other reason why is we let the police department take the lead on the side by side is sort of the effect is making that side by side, making it a multi-purpose unit, whether you could haul a slide in fire pack, which we've had in the past tundra fires that we can't get to with regular trucks. So, and then also beach rescues, which carrying somebody who is 200 to 300 pounds over the rocks is not a welcomed thing to come across with potential of injury to the volunteers or paid staff is it's up there. So hopefully I'm in favor of it. We'd be able to house it somewhere up at the fire hall. That's the other thing that we'd have to work on is positioning of it, whether it be in public works or between the two buildings or make a covered shed or something. But it's a needed. All of us use our own equipment, and we know it works. We are leaning towards city purchased items. The fire department has purchased a snow machine, which we've had access in the fire hall during the wintertime. Makes it a lot easier just to run up there and grab it and go out on a mission to recover somebody. So, but we would support whatever you guys do as far as side by side goes. Ambulance department, or not ambulance, police department. We did have a side by side that went to the cemetery. It was used for a bit, but it's up there being utilized for groundskeeping.
It's not adequate for what you were doing anyway.
No, I mean, as far as carrying a Stokes basket or a backboard, it makes it complicated. So, but the biggest push is to get the extra added full-time position. And, the amount of calls that we have, I would actually like to see having 4, but I know that the city can't afford that just yet. So that's maybe your next topic of discussion.
Well, we are, in fairness to the chief, and there is money that there have been made some changes in how Medicare and Medicaid is reimbursed. The chief was supposed to have a meeting last February, a year ago.
It got all thrown out the window. It's not thrown out the window. It's still on the table. And it's how Medicaid is reappropriates their funds to the different departments. So that will help. Once we get that, then we could go to a more of a hybrid paid department type of deal.
So we've been waiting for something to happen from the state of Alaska for well over a year now, and I know that they're supposed to consult with the Fire Chiefs Association. So yes, that's something that probably we're needing to go towards.
And through COVID funds this year, we were able to knock it out of the park by purchasing items through the ambulance departments. We purchased the two load, striker load carts that's auto loads, which takes the liability out of getting a person injured lifting a heavier patient into the ambulance. So that was much appreciated. Hopefully that if there's any leftover CARES money, we might be able to get rid of it.
No, those things are a godsend, and when we end up with the unit that doesn't have one,
Yeah,
you know it.
you know it, that's for sure. But
It's a young man's game, John.
anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
How many, sorry if I missed this, how many volunteers are there?
Well, we have approximately 18 on the ambulance side and approximately 21 just retired last night, so we're down to 29 on the fire side.
And no, this deal that Glenn and Jimmy are talking about with Medicare and Medicaid, when that actually comes around, then you are able to bill based on your costs. And so, if the cost is having people to respond, that becomes a cost that can be billed. And so that's why, there's, this is being watched by us and others. And, there's reason to keep the service, and it will pay for itself. It's just and in that process, become better. But the delay with COVID and all that, has just shoved this off. So it's been a little more painful in the process.
My question is, how are we paying for the second person? I thought it was because of the billing that you were able to currently conduct. Did I misunderstand where that funding was coming from?
If I remember off the top of my head, right now they collect about $350,000. There's 100 or bill at 350. There's bad debt of 150. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. So they net 200,000.
That's what we've been budgeting. I think in F21 it might have been 175 net, but in this F22 we're saying 200,000.